I know you're not supposed to yuck other people's yums, but yuck.
This is On Nutrition, a podcast from Mayo Clinic where we dig into the latest nutrition trends and research to help you understand what's health and what's hype. I'm Tara Schmidt, a registered dietitian with Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. This episode, fat phobia. Now, we've had a couple episodes about weight bias and weight neutrality in the healthcare system. We've heard from doctors, dietitians, and researchers, but we haven't heard a patient's perspective before. Our guest today hasn't just experienced fat phobia in the doctor's office, he recorded it for his award-winning podcast. Ronald Young Jr. is an audio producer and host based in Alexandria, Virginia. He's a regular contributor to NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour and the creator of a fantastic podcast called Wait For It. That's WEIGHT, about navigating the world as a fat person. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I have complicated feelings about the word fat, and it's so helpful to get Ronald's perspective about how that word has been weaponized and reclaimed by the plus-size community. Hey, Ronald. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Ronald, why did you decide to create your podcast, which I've absolutely listened to and enjoyed? Wait For It.
So I felt like there was a lot that I wanted to say about body image. I was thinking about this back in 2021, 2022, looking at the body positivity movement and seeing that there were conversations being had, but I was caught at the intersection of diet culture and body positivity, where one side was saying, work hard and change yourself no matter what the cost, before after pictures. Whereas for body positivity, love yourself no matter the state, spurn any intentional weight loss.
Yes.
And I felt like there was no conversation that was nuanced and talking about the ways in which fat folks have to navigate a world that really was not made for them and ultimately does not fit them. So I wanted to have those conversations in a narrative format, telling stories from my own life and allowing folks to relax into the relatability that is thinking about your body and thinking about your weight all the time.
And you've had really cool conversations. And I have even felt, if I'm allowed to say, from a medical standpoint, kind of at that intersection too, of like, I truly deeply care about your health. And I don't really care at all about your gene size. And so that might be healthy at every size, right? Or HAES kind of standpoint of like, does it have to be one or the other? Like, can't we all just get along?
I mean, if I could just throw a monkey wrench in. But I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about the word health and the ways that people default to saying, I just want you to be healthy. But health is such a coded word now.
Yeah.
I want it to mean actually healthy. And I said that because I started getting sick earlier this week. I had a cough. I felt ill. I had the chills. It felt like it was the flu. I started taking chlorocidin, taking care of myself, just trying to get myself healthy, meaning that I don't want to cough anymore.
Yes.
That's what healthy means in that way. But I feel like there's people that would say, Ronald, you would be healthier if you were less fat, meaning that, Ronald, you could get rid of your cough if you weren't so fat. But I'm like, skinny people get colds too. You know what I mean? Like they also get the flu and COVID. Do you think I'm more susceptible to be less healthy because I'm fat? So I struggle sometimes with the word health because I know what it means. And Tara, to be clear, in this conversation already, I already feel like you're using health the way it actually was meant to use.
Okay, thank you.
Actually not sick. You know what I mean? But I feel the ubiquitousness of using it as not fat. I've been struggling with that for many, many years.
Yeah. Does health in general tend to mean smaller body? Right. I have a psychologist that I work with at Mayo who said they had a patient once who said, I think I could come to the ER having accidentally chopped off my finger. And the person in the ER would be like, you know, you could probably lose a few pounds.
Correct. As if that would grow my finger back.
Are those things related?
That's the biggest struggle we have now, is just that we've conflated straight-sizedness with health so often that it makes us overlook the real symptoms.
Now, Ronald, you used the word fat. I don't know if you know this. I hate that word. And the reason that I hate that word, and I've said this before, because in my field, I have spent my whole career trying to convince my patients and even other healthcare professionals that obesity is a diagnostic code, right? That it's an inflammatory state, that it's a disease state. So I've even said to people in my office, like, we don't use the F word. And I don't really care what swear words you say, but I would really like you to not use the word fat, because I want you to be thinking in this conversation with me about you having a diagnosis and you're at a medical center and I'm trying to help you treat, prevent, whatever, improve that diagnosis. And I think that maybe why I'm sensitive to it is because it feels almost like a slur that's probably only reserved for people who identify with that word.
Yes, yes.
What do you think about this?
We, as a people, have not done the work, I believe, to take the venom out of the word fat.
Oh,
We haven't done it.
I agree.
And because we haven't done it, although there is a movement of fat folks to reclaim the word, and I applaud those movements, support those movements, and think they should move forward, it still makes it so that this word fat, depending on the tone, the context, and the situation in which it is used, can put a red flag in your mind to say, what you mean fat? You know what I mean? There's some insult that uses the word fat. Also, I don't like the way we only pull out fat after we've been hurt. It's been the one word that we hold behind a gate. We think it in our heads, and we only pull it out when it's time to actually hurt someone. Let's say you've gained 10 pounds. You're not even classified as a fat person. You're still straight sized. I've noticed you've gained 10 pounds. Me and you have some sort of argument. And at that point of the argument, I'm like, why don't you take your fat behind up the stairs and get out? All of a sudden, I've revealed this thing that I've noticed about you that I know is going to hurt you. It's true. And that's how we use it.
Word. When you need to like stab someone in the heart, that's when you're using it.
Yes. And I feel like until we fix that, it's hard for us to actually in earnest move forward and use it as a descriptor. I would say we would do the same thing with the word short in some ways, meaning that if someone comes in and you love them and they are short, you're not going to mention their height. We'll say especially for dudes.
I was going to say especially
specific.
for men. Yeah. 100%.
You break up with that same dude, he turns out to be a jerk, he cheated on you. What is the first thing you're going to say? This short so-and-so did whatever, you know? And all of a sudden, that one thing that we were willing to overlook, and that's the problem. We're looking at ourselves and say, I'm willing to overlook this perceived flaw about you, but then I'm hiding it inside myself and I'm using it as an insult later. And we haven't done the work to say, that's not an insult. It's just a descriptor.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like if a girlfriend broke up with someone, I may be like, whatever, girl, he was short anyway, right? But I would have never spoken about that while they were dating.
And it didn't matter to you when you loved him, you know? It didn't matter to you at that point.
Oh my God. Tell me how you define fat phobia. And is there a difference between that word and weight bias, which is more likely the term that I would use? But is there a difference between those?
I think like all weight bias is obviously fat phobia.
Maybe unintentional.
But there's some, exactly. I think fat phobia can be described the way that we're using the word fat kind of as a secret insult that we hide and then kind of flash out when we need to use it. Whereas weight bias is the assumption that a fat person can't do a thing or is unhealthy.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more, I would say, technical. And I feel like in maybe some cases, weight bias is easier for us to overcome, maybe from data and evidence. Oh my God, Ronald just ran a mile and he did fine and he's fat. I am now marking something against the weight bias I had. Like, oh, I can change that. Now I can make a new assumption about fat folks when I see them. They can also be athletic. I think fat phobia is insidious on the inside.
Yeah.
You know, it's the ways in which we think about ourselves secretly and think about everyone else based on the media and all of the information we get externally about being fat.
It seems uglier to me.
Yeah, it is. That's the only way to say it. Fat phobia to me is the insidious way that we think about ourselves, that if our friends heard us, they'd be like, Tara, stop talking about yourself like that. If they heard the inner thoughts in your head, to me, that's what fat phobia is.
I like that. Do you have any experiences witnessing, experiencing, or even committing fat phobia yourself that you're willing to share?
There's an episode I did of Wait For It based on one of my college hookups. and we go way in deep in that episode. It's called A Shame Spiral. And own the fact that I liked Caitlyn and found her attractive was something that I needed to keep secret from my friends who were making fun of me for liking Caitlyn and thinking she was attractive. It turned into this vicious cycle of me treating Caitlyn poorly because of the perception that I was getting from my friends. And I go in depth in the episode. It was tough because, at the time I was straight sized, and it was something that I wouldn't fully understand until I began to gain weight and I got a lot fatter. That was something I was fighting on the inside and a little bit externally from the folks around me. It's funny because the ways in which people treat fat folks generally, especially fat women, most fat women will tell you that they have no problem hooking up with dudes. They have no problem meeting and being in relationships, any of that. But what they do have a problem with is the ways in which they are perceived by other folks and perceived in the relationships that they're in, especially if it's with straight sized people, because then all of a sudden it's some sort of issue. Why would you choose her? Even though people like fat people, but it's something that people do secretly.
And I've even heard you talk about how there's a gender difference between, okay, she broke up with me for a straight-sized person, and how does it make me feel?
Yeah, that was tough. Especially, because in the end, she mentions that she's not attracted to fat dudes, that's something that just sticks in my head. Like, I am, the fattest I've ever been. And the thing that I always have to check myself on when it comes to relationships or talking to women at all is I almost want to flat out ask them in the beginning, are you into this? Because if you're not into this, you can't trick yourself into being into this. There's nothing about my personality or the way that I talk or any of that that's going to make you blind to the fact that I am a fat man. Do you also like the shape, not just the voice and the thoughts? Do you also like the shape? Because that's important to me. So if you're not into this, there's no going forward with this.
Why do you think society has such a problem with people in larger bodies?
I think it's because we're told that fat folks are less than. We're constantly given that information over and over again. I feel like the information we've been given is that you are supposed to be fit and in shape. You are supposed to have money in your pocket. You are supposed to be partnered with someone very attractive. You are supposed to be buying a house, having kids, all of that. And if you can do any of that while being fat, people are conditioned to think that you've done something wrong, that you've cheated somehow.
Yeah.
It's wildly unfair and stupid, and it goes against the truth that we see in society. Fat people are successful. Fat people make it despite intense weight bias and fat phobia. But we're convinced that the bill of goods we're sold is that you do A, B, and C, and that's how you can move forward. That's how you progress in life.
Well, and think about diet culture, right? The whole point of diet culture is trying to convince you and sell you or shame you into these 1.5 million ways that you can make your body smaller. As dangerous as they are, as harmful as they are, as horrific as they are. But you'll get skinny.
Yes. And I've always thought I was fat, even at my most straight-sized. I was in 7th grade playing basketball, and they did shirts versus skins. I was on the skin side, and I hated it. And, I'm playing basketball, and later on, one of the girls said, "We saw you playing basketball. Crystal said that you're fat and you have no chest." And I remember at the time being so hurt by it, 13 years old. So now I have a complex at 13 years old about what I look like with no shirt on at age 13. I'm not The Rock, I'm age 13. And ever since then, it feels like I've been trying to outrun what I look like with no shirt in this way that continues just to eat at me to say, oh, all of us, when we take our shirt off, we're supposed to be on display, looking our best, summer body ready to go. When the truth is, if your body is here, it is a summer body. You're ready to go.
Yes.
Just take your shirt off and enjoy your time at the pool. It is what it is.
A bikini body is a body wearing a bikini. Goodbye.
That's all it is. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
It's time we unpack some vocabulary, like the word healthy, which can be pretty loaded. Do we mean someone is not ill in any way, or do we mean they appear to not be ill because they happen to be in a smaller body? Then there's the word fat. Are we using it as a descriptor or an insult? Weight bias is the prejudice some may have about people in larger bodies, while fat phobia is the internalized fear or hatred of plus-size people. Harboring these stigmas can destroy relationships and self-image, but it can also get in the way of getting proper health care, like in the story Ronald shares next.
You have an episode of Wait For It where you recount your experience going to the doctor.
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, that was tough. That was probably, I'd been to that doctor very often, and it'd been very rare that I'd ever walked into his office and he didn't start a conversation about my weight.
Even if you chopped off your finger, right?
Even if I chopped off my finger. I remember I walked in there and I had lost weight, and I was talking to him about getting a CPAP because I felt like my sleep wasn't good enough for me to wake up energized. So I'm like, I really need to work on my sleep, doc. And he says, well, you need to make sure you're doing your part too. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you got to be working out, doing all this. And you could hear it in the episode because I recorded it. But the conversation that we had was very much me saying, well, I am working out. And him saying, well, you're not working out the right way. And I'm like, well, I'm playing volleyball. Well, you should be playing basketball. Well, I'm going on walks where you should be running. Well, I'm eating this. Well, you should be eating that. Then I say, I've lost 20 pounds since we've last visited. Well, you don't want to lose weight too fast. It was one of the worst doctor interactions I've ever had in my life. And it made me distrust doctors. Doctors used to be something in society where we understood that they knew more than us, and that information was there to benefit us.
Like respected members of our community who we should trust and listen to.
Yes. And I feel like when bias crept in and political motivations crept in, I began to understand doctors as people who have this information and sometimes have bias based on the information. And I feel like walking in and having this conversation with him, I felt like the only way that people were going to understand, because I tell people about going to the doctor all the time, and they're always like, oh, that's terrible. But until I recorded that conversation, that's when people were like, hey, that really is terrible. And I said, yes, y'all thought I was just going to the doctor and them like looking at the clipboard and be like, you should lose a few pounds. And that was the end of the conversation. No, what I'm telling you is I'm going to the doctor, like you said, Tara, with my hand bleeding from being chopped in a guillotine, and them saying, Ronald, you need to go on some laps and lose some weight, and you wouldn't have to worry about guillotines anymore. And once people made that connection, they started to get a lot more sympathetic about what's happening to fat folks when they go see a doctor.
Yeah. I get to speak clinically about the diagnosis of obesity at a lot of conferences, and they've never asked me to do this, but I start every single one of these talks with like 5 or 6 slides on healthcare and weight bias, because that's the audience I'm talking to. And I'm like, listen up, folks. We are part of the problem. And the graph that I show is this really horrific little cycle of like, if a patient experiences, if they like sniff out the weight bias, they're less likely to come back to you. You're less likely to spend time with them. They're less likely to engage in the habits that you just lectured them about. They're less likely to make their next appointment. Like, it's the wrong way, folks. And did you experience that of like, you were less likely to return, one, to that physician, I'm hoping, because they don't deserve your business, but even just engage with the healthcare system in general?
It made me more hesitant about going back to that particular doctor. And it definitely made it so that I wasn't so quick to go back for a physical when maybe I should. You know, it's funny because I got a new doctor and she's great. Health at Every Size doctor, and she treats me well. I feel like I might have gone too far in the other direction, because I'll basically go in and she'll be like, don't ever worry about ever losing weight. And I really want to say, Doc, it's fine. We could just talk to me about my blood pressure. And she does that. You know, she talks to me about my blood pressure. She talks to me about medication I could be taking. She talks to me about my CPAP, all of that, right? So that all feels great. I got a sleep study, got a CPAP. I'm doing great. But I do think now, like my mother recently died of cancer. And I feel like one thing that I think about a lot is, okay, again, I told you I have 2 marginalizations. Black people don't like going to the doctor for a lot of reasons. Black women, especially, going to the doctor is a nightmare experience.
We have some horrific
for
statistics.
A lot of them.
Yeah. they're really scared.
Exactly. Fat or not.
Yes, correct.
And I feel like there was a time in which, especially if the ways in which we went to a doctor, they cared for us, they were not alarmist, they held our hand, they worked with us to actually, listened and actually walked with us into health, most of us would go with them. And I feel like for me, especially seeing my mother die, it makes me a little bit more proactive about health generally. Like I'm feeling a little sick now. I'm like, well, maybe I should go to the clinic and say, hey, should I be taking antibiotics or any of that? Like what's going on? It's making me want to do that more. So it's a little bit of both, Tara. I can understand where people are like, let's not go to the doctor. And I was very slow to move a few times because it was basically like, do I feel like being lectured about my weight? Yeah. Well, I really do need this prescription for so-and-so. So the cost of the prescription is going to the doctor.
I was going to ask what advice you have for providers who are treating plus-size patients, but I also want a little bit of your advice for patients advocating for themselves. Like, if you are allowed to not be weighed unless you need a medication that is dose dependent on your weight, which you're not a dog or a baby, like unlikely in most cases. You don't have to be weighed. You can put the weight conversation off or completely not talk about it at all. And this is my opinion and what can be done in my office, but I'd love to hear your advice both for patients and for providers treating those patients.
So the first thing I would say to most patients is that your anger, your feelings, your emotions, they're all justified.
They're valid.
I want to validate all of them. You have a right to feel the way that you feel. If you feel comfortable enough to speak up, speak up. Say the thing that's on your mind. Challenge them. If this is a doctor that when they receive your challenge, their instinct is not to correct themselves, to apologize and give you the best care possible in that moment, then you need to see a new doctor.
Agree.
That's what I would say to patients. To providers, I would say, one, humility. There's an assumption, again, of the knowledge of being a doctor that I greatly respect. I respect everyone that went to medical school, did the MCATs, had to avoid the socialness of your 20s in order to stay in school, to become a resident. I respect all of that, and I respect that path. And I know that a lot of medical providers are dealing with people who are not listening to them. I understand that, and I'm sorry that that's happening to you. But every single patient you have is someone you should be evaluating on an individual basis. You should be striving to meet their needs and listening to the question that they're actually saying. If they come to you and their hand is chopped off and it is bleeding, you know what you need to be focused on in that moment. I want this person to not be in pain. I want to see if I can reattach their hand. And if I can't, I want to see what other methods they can to be able to use their hand and all that. This is not an opportunity for me to tell them to get on the treadmill. I'm not concerned about these other things. I'm concerned about giving them proper care. I think if you could do that, listen to them, observe, and use your degree for that type of good, then you will be a good provider and you'll be providing excellent care.
Can I add two things?
You can add whatever you want. This is your show.
You're the expert. Asking the question, what brings you here today? Right? Because if I had said, hey, Ronald, what brings you here today? And you're like, I am sleeping like garbage. I'm a little concerned I have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is scary. Like it really is a scary thing to me. And so we address the sleep apnea. We get you the oximeter. We get you a CPAP, blah, 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 a sleep test, whatever you need. And then if they wanted to, they could say something like, Ronald, is it okay if I talk to you about the relationship between weight and sleep apnea? Now, if your answer is no, we respect your answer being no. Would that have been an okay question? Like, in all honesty, if I had said that after we had addressed your concern?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I'll say this. I think this is where the knowledge of being a doctor also has to be paired with the nuance of reading the room. Because all fat people know that they're fat.
True.
They all know that. So I feel like the hardest part for a patient walking into a provider's office is walking in there and having the provider essentially say to them in that question, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the relationship between weight and sleep apnea. And what my response would be like, I assume based on all of the fat phobia I've had and weight bias I've had in my life, that every single bad thing that happens to me happens because I'm fat. So if you're about to tell me that I have sleep apnea because I'm fat, I am unsurprised. And I promise you, I've been on the treadmill treadmill more than you have, and I don't know if this conversation is one of value.
Oh, see, now I feel bad because I was like, that was my Minnesota way of being like, is it okay? And you're like, Tara, I know what you're saying.
I get
it. You said it in a lot of words, but you were actually just saying like, hey, Ronald, can we talk about you being oh my God,
yes.
my whole career.
If we end up in the same place.
What do I do?
Okay, but this is what I'm saying. I'm saying like in that moment, if we've already talked about the sleep apnea, if a patient comes to you and says, Doc, I've been fat for a long time and I would like to lose weight, what would be the healthiest ways for me to do that? I feel like that's the door opening.
Okay. You want them to open the door, not me.
Correct.
Okay.
If you're the one that is opening the door, you are.
Would you like to understand the relationship? Okay, I get it now. I'm listening back to myself. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Don't open the door, Tara.
There's a few lessons we can learn from Ronald's experience at the doctor. If you think your healthcare provider may be giving you inadequate treatment because of your size, your feelings are valid. You can switch providers, or if you're comfortable, you can speak up at the moment and use their reaction as a measure of whether you want to continue to see them. If you're a provider, you can start appointments by asking patients about their general health concerns, reading the room, and taking the patient's lead on whether they want to talk about their weight. Now we'll talk about the constant food and diet trends online, and Ronald's read as an informal body sociologist. Ronald, in your work, you've sort of become a sociologist of how Americans generally perceive each other's bodies. So I'd like to point out some current online food and diet trends, many of which raise my blood pressure, but I want to get your take. Can we do that?
Sure. Yeah.
The gosh darn what I eat in a day trend.
Oh my God.
Do we even go there? We're both like, no,
Tara,
I can't.
Tara, I hate it so much. So the what I eat in a day trend bothers me because I think it's propaganda.
Oh.
Yes, it's all content that's built to make us feel more inferior about the ways in which we're living our lives. As we see a person eat like 4 blueberries and somehow a protein shake and also a bowl of cereal and maybe some eggs and bacon all before 12 p.m. And then for some reason, this person is also like the idealized form of a human. They just seem like they have it all together. And they do these videos and we watch them and we're just like, wow, I'm trash. I'm garbage. Obviously, I can't eat what they're eating in a day, but maybe I need to make steps to do better for myself. It puts us on this constant treadmill. And we already do that to ourselves. Why do we need any external impetus for us to continue moving forward or continue hating ourselves? And I feel like what I eat in a day, it's a perfect microcosm of you're not good enough. Look at what I'm doing. This is what you could be doing. Yeah. And if I can do it and have it all, so can you. And again, we go back into things of, do they live with their parents? Did they marry rich?
Why is your
kitchen
so clean?
How do you have the time to be doing all this meal prep all the time? Why is your kitchen so clean? Yes.
Yeah, and this could even be with clothes or makeup or jewelry, right? Like the ones that I watch about people getting ready. It could be simple motivation like, oh, I like that outfit, or like that's her favorite mascara. Like, cool, right? And we could leave it there.
Yes.
But the question I think for the viewer would be, is this making you feel inferior? Is this making you feel like you're not doing something right? Is this making you feel like you need a new mascara, even though your mascara is perfectly fine, Tara?
Especially the what I eat in a day stuff. Whoever you have to pay in order to improve all that, all of a sudden, that's who it benefits. So I don't watch them. I won't.
I love what you just said. Do you care at all about like trendy health foods? Gosh darn cottage cheese. It's having a moment right now. Sardines. What else is trendy? Sometimes I just eat food and everyone's like, are you making your pizza crust out of cottage cheese? I'm like, no, I'm making my pizza crust out of good old white flour, people. Not
out of dough. So I remember I was dating this woman and we were making rice. And I was like, well, we should be using brown rice. And she said, Ronald, the white rice is fine.
It's fine.
She was like, there's barely a nutritional difference between the two. Most of the problems when people are like, well, I'm developing a gluten allergy, we shouldn't be eating gluten, or we shouldn't be drinking dairy. When they start to say all those, I always want to respond to them. For hundreds of years, we ate these foods. And in the last 50 or 60, all of a sudden, these same foods that we've been eating have all of a sudden been poisonous.
Toxic is the right word, Ronald. Toxic.
Yes. Yes, what changed? What are they putting in the food? So yes, back to cottage cheese. I don't like cottage cheese. I'm never going to eat it. And I don't like sardines. I prefer oysters. I eat them with cheese, a cracker, and a little bit of hot sauce, and it's perfect.
I can do that. Do you care about mukbangs? Do you know what this is? It's like a video where
yes, and I hate them.
Okay.
I hate
Do you
them.
they're sitting down and they're eating like a lot of food? That's what we're doing? We're watching people do that?
I don't like it. I know you're not supposed to yuck other people's yums, but yuck.
Yuck to cottage cheese. Yuck to sardines and yuck to mukbangs.
Yuck to sardines and yuck to mukbangs, yes.
Okay. We talked a little bit about this. I get asked a lot about this. I speak a lot about this. What do you think about GLP-1s? Is that a whole other episode?
Man, you asked this question real late in the... Listen.
You're like, we don't have that much time, Tara.
I think one of the things that bother me the most about GLP-1s is someone wrote an article that was called Ozempic Butt or something like that.
Yes. We got Ozempic Butt and Ozempic Face. So God forbid you're losing weight, which you've been told to do by society for years and years and years and years. And now you lost the weight. You have less volume in your face or in your butt because that's where your fat cells used to be. And now we're still mad at your body. And now you have something called Ozempic butt. Sorry, that was my take on at least that. My opinion of GLP-1s is different. But like, can we just not get it right? Like, I can't do anything right.
I mean, I think, I think the idea of a GLP-1, when I think about what they were originally used for, the discussion you and I are having is about off-label usage. Because we're supposed to be using GLP-1s for diabetics.
They are approved for obesity.
So if we're talking, yes. Okay. But I feel like initially it was almost like the same thing they did with Viagra, where it was like, hey, this thing isn't helping my blood pressure, but can I get some more of those anyway?
Going on here.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I would never take a GLP-1. I would never do bariatric surgery.
Oh, why?
But I am suspicious of the long-term effects of GLP-1s.
Okay.
And I don't trust pharmaceutical companies.
Sure.
I'm not being tinfoil hatty. I do not trust the ways in which we flipped over, and now I'm seeing 3 commercials per football game about 3 different GLP-1s that I could be using. And I still think that this is a byproduct of the ways in which we hate fat people, so much so that we say, hey, maybe we should, take this drug. Mm-hmm. It feels tough to me. I have friends that have taken it. I have had colleagues that have taken it. I have people that have done both bariatric surgery and GLP-1. I do not think about them different morally or as a human for doing that. It's just not a decision that I would make myself.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing, ideally, about your health is that you get to decide what pathway you go down, right? Unless you're in a dire situation. God, hopefully you get to just say, that's not for me.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if I walked and just ate chicken and brown rice for
don't broccoli.
3
You
months,
have to have broccoli with that. You have to meal prep it in a ton of Tupperware,
in a little glass,
without your shirt on.
Correct. There you go.
Kitchen island.
If I did all of that, if I did all of those things, I would likely lose weight over a period of time.
Ew, yeah.
That thing about the ways in which GLP-1s burn the fat in your body and the ways in which that your body shape could change, it makes me sad because I think about my own body and what it looks like now. And I think about, sometimes I look at myself even as a fat person and say, man, I like the way that I look.
You're
I
allowed
like the way
to like how you look, no matter what kind of body you have.
Yeah. And I like the way my fat is distributed and all that. Knowing that losing weight is going to create a redistribution, something that you would do if you were just burning fat naturally. Yeah. But using a GLP-1, there's something about the ways in which it's burning it differently and thinking about, I don't know what my body's going to look like. It's kind of like when you ask like the devil or a bad genie for a wish and you're just like, I'd like to lose weight. And you're like, done. And you're like, your butt's gone. I'm like, no, I love my butt.
I'm like, oh no, that's not what I said.
Exactly. You're like, no, that's not what I want. They're like, that's what you asked for. I feel like that's how I feel about GLP-1s.
What do you think these trends, especially the ones that are related to weight management, what do you think they say about conventional body standards?
It's hard to convince me that this isn't all about aesthetics.
I agree.
And I think that if people began to admit that more, it would change how we talked and viewed weight management. Because then we would say, is this about this weight is creating this problem, therefore you need to lose this weight in order to stop this problem? Or are we saying, I'm looking at you, you're disgusting, your belly's hanging out the bottom of your shirt, and you got to get healthier. So let's get on that treadmill so we get that before and after picture. Despite whatever else happens, this is what we need to get to. Is that the way we're looking at the weight management conversation? Because if we're actually attaching it to health, I feel like all of these conversations would be different. I'll say it like this. If I lose 100 pounds and we're still fat and someone showed up and saw me 100 pounds lighter and still will call me a fat person, if all of the health problems I had are gone by me losing 100 pounds, period, and not a pound more, would people still expect me to lose more weight? And I believe that answer is yes, because they'd say you're still fat, you need to be smaller. Sure. Whereas I feel like doctors are a part of that, where there's still no part of them saying, oh, well, you've lost 100 pounds, you're in great shape. Don't worry about it. Just keep managing your weight and you're fine. But I don't hear that enough in society to say, Ronald, you need to lose exactly 41 pounds and you'd be fine.
And you can disagree with this, but I want to say that maybe both can be true when we even look at bariatric surgery or GLP-1s. The medical provider in me is saying, do I look at your body weight loss percentage, right? Not the weight that you end up at, but how much percentage you've lost, how meaningful that was to your diagnoses. And if your diagnoses have improved or resolved, you can stop. And I do not care how many pounds you weigh. So know that there are people out there, and that's how we do things at Mayo, even with GLP-1s, even with bariatric surgery, right? Some with bariatric surgery, the expectation is never to get them to a normal weight. If we can get you from a BMI of 70 to 40, we celebrate that, and we help you maintain your BMI of 40. So know that it's there.
I still think that GLP-1s, for the doctor that I walked in and had my hand chopped off, and he talks about my weight, they have found a miracle that they can just prescribe in a minute. They walk in and say, you want a GLP-1? Because now it's normal. I'll say this. Years before GLP-1s were popularized the way they are, my doctor says to me, hey, you can get some help. There's a pill you could take or there's a shot that you can have. And he was saying that before it was widely known to use shots for
We've
GLP-1s.
had weight loss drugs for a while now.
Exactly. But I also feel it is to the advantage of pharmaceutical companies for us to be talking about ways to fix it now rather than us having a real discussion about what's in our food. Because to say that obesity or fat is something that just came out of nowhere and has nothing to do with the food that we're pushing and telling people to eat.
That's a joke.
What? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like Michelle Obama had a whole campaign about, hey, let's get fit. Why don't y'all eat more vegetables? And they were like, I'm going to eat cake no matter what. And like, it became like this very contentious
on that
thing.
I was dumbfounded. Yes. I was like, oh, God forbid we plant a garden. Like, why are we yelling at her?
Yeah.
Stop yelling at Michelle.
That's my question. I'm like, what if we just all agreed there needs to be vegetables at every single meal? What if we just agreed on that, right? Every single meal, real vegetables, not garbage, not just on a burger, real vegetables, every single meal. We did that for a couple years. What types of changes would we see in people? But that's not even a campaign that we would. I mean, the mask mandate was hard enough for people. So I think a vegetable mandate.
God forbid we make you eat a carrot.
Cabbage? Not here. Ugh.
What resources or spaces are available for plus-size people to find support? Like, where do you turn your listeners to just find the right community?
I have a list of resources that I just post in my show notes on Wait For It, but I want to offer something a little bit more existential, which is to consider how you're curating the feeds around you.
Yes.
If you are following a lot of straight-size folks, if you are listening to a lot of straight-size folks, listen to straight-size podcasts, whatever that may be influencing the way you think about yourself and other folks. Especially when we're in an age of Ozempic and a lot of folks are losing weight, it makes it tough to have value when it seems like value is increasing based on how small you are generally. If you find creators out there who are more inclusive, and if you can just change what you're listening to generally, I think that you can change your perception of yourself at least a little bit.
Yeah, and there's so much in this world that we're not in control of. You're in control of who shows up on your social media.
You have control of your algorithm, yes.
Yes. What would you want people of all sizes to learn from your work and from your podcast?
That I believe that all of us are thinking about our weight a lot more than we should be. And I think the truth is you are more than a number on a scale. You're more than the way you look in your clothes. You are just more than that. As we progress into hopefully what is a more forgiving and inclusive society, know that we all could do more work to be more supportive of one another and to be more understanding of one another.
I love that. Ronald, this was an amazing conversation. I'm so lucky that I got to kind of pick your brain. Thank you for your honesty and your candor. I think it's a really important message that needs to be heard just everywhere.
Thank you for having me. I am wholly unqualified to be talking to anyone from the Mayo Clinic, but I am so happy to have had this conversation and to at least add one more small piece to the puzzle when it comes to health.
Food and weight loss trends are constantly changing, but the one constant we can control is curating our feeds, our social media intake, and what messages we surround ourselves with, so we can love the bodies we have just the way they are. That's all for this episode, but if you have a follow-up question, leave us a voicemail at 507-538-6272, and we'll answer it in a future episode. For more On Nutrition episodes and resources, check us out online at mayoclinic.org/onnutrition. And if you found this show helpful, please subscribe and make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. It really helps others find our show. Thanks for listening. And until next time, eat well and be well.